Welcome to the policy. Everybody, welcome to the policy committee meeting. Combined meeting of the Strafford EDD and Strafford MPO. Today's the 15th. No, it's not. Today is the 19th of August, 2022, 9:06 a.m. There are some people participating remotely. A lot of people in the room. We can start within the room. Bill, start us out.
Bill Fisher, Farmington.
Tom Crosby, Maverick.
Karen Golab, Milton.
Peter Nelson, New Market.
Larry Brown, Milton.
Mike Babinski, Summersworth.
Mark Richardson, Summersworth.
Len Davidson, Hampshire DOT.
Rochester.
Dave Landry, Dover. Online, we have Herb.
Review to Rollinsford.
Tim.
Tim White, New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services.
Okay, and Lori.
Yep, Lori Reidner Patterson from New Hampshire DOT.
And Ricky.
Hi, Ricky DeSola, New Hampshire DES.
Okay, and Megan. Jackson.
Good morning.
Hi, Jackson Rand, SRPC.
Thank you, everybody. Staff communication.
We're busy.
Staff is busy. Noted. Okay.
That'll be for the next little bit.
Yes,
Well, when you're not busy, you should worry. So.
exactly.
Oh, no worry
That
about it.
feels weird.
Okay.
Chugging along.
Okay, on to our action items. Need a motion to approve the draft minutes from July 15th.
So moved.
Tom, second from Bill.
Second.
Fisher. Any questions? All right, got the minutes.
Yes.
Okay. All right, nothing, no changes. I'm gonna need a roll call on this because we have the hybrid meeting going here. So, approval of the minutes, Bill,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Karen,
Upstate.
Peter,
Yes.
Larry,
Yes.
Barb,
Yes.
Katrin,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Glenn,
Yes.
Joe, Dave Landry, yes. And online, Herb,
Yes.
and Tiff.
Yes.
Okay, that's unanimous. 3B, approval of the 10-year plan criteria weighting recommended by the TAC. Colin, that's you.
That's me. And I really apologize. I don't know why this wasn't included in the package. Today's main focus is the 10-year plan. As Jen mentioned, we're busy, and the 10-year plan is a big part of that because we have the process is nicely spread out, but we have a lot to do before November 1. So we have a batch of projects. I'll talk about that in a minute. The first action item we have on this whole 10-year plan process is assigning weights to the criteria that will be used to rank those projects. Many of you provided input on weighting those criteria, and the results are here. So it's a pretty good mix of tech and policy input from small and large communities. And so just for to be a little easier visual here, safety and state of repair were, again, pretty large like they were last time in the share of the weight. Natural hazard resilience is a bit more than last time, which is interesting. And then mobility and network significance were up there as well. So not a huge seismic shift, already major surprises from the last time. Again, this is one of the areas where all the RPCs are using the same criteria, the DOT as well, but we can weight these for desires of the region and the municipality. So, just before I don't keep talking, any questions on this part of the process? Yeah,
Just a quick one, Colin. You mentioned when you're summarizing the pie chart, was it the natural resource one? You said it was a little bit of a bump compared to last time. Is that what you said?
yeah, not a huge
Not
one,
huge, but
but-
noted.
yeah, but I know there's
I wasn't sure I heard that right.
yeah, a little bit more. So, yeah, I'll explain more about how the criteria work as we move forward. But once we get these established and finalized, my colleague Mark Davey, who's out doing traffic counts right now, is developing an online scoring system, sort of via SurveyMonkey, so that the weights will get plugged into that, and then you all can take time to score those projects at home. We've done it various ways. Last round was with a big scary Excel sheet that was horrible and irritating to use, so we're trying to get rid of that. Yeah, any other questions on weightings or anything we'll discuss about this phase?
On there, we have, obviously, we feel like we have sufficient enough contribution to establishment of the waivers, right?
Yeah, it was pretty good representation. It's somewhere. It looks like it might have gone to.
I didn't need to know
Yeah.
that. I'm not asking for names or just,
Oh, there it is.
trying to put together waivers. You want to have a fair number.
Yeah, we got nice representation this time around. So this part was still in Excel, so I think folks had some technical issues, and that's a little bit on me. We'll try to make this into somehow like a SurveyMonkey as well, some other user-friendly tool.
My eyesight's trouble, I've mentioned that before, but I can see those names. Did you decide you didn't want my results?
No, I know I incorporated yours.
Okay. No, I was not suggesting mine were. Okay.
I know we talked about it. I'll make sure. Okay. But yeah, if folks are satisfied with the process and so forth, these were recommended and reviewed by TAC, and we can incorporate those into the skid score.
So is that kind of making the results from, the survey that people did, make their own adjustments? How does that?
How do you mean?
Well,
They could, but they didn't.
they have the right to do that, don't they?
For
They-
this part of things?
They have the right to recommend
Yeah.
adjustments. They did not.
Okay. They were satisfied.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for going with SurveyMonkey. Next time around,
Yeah, I know.
I've had issues and on my Mac, I can't even convert it to a document that I can try to type in my scores and things like that, and nothing happens. So, we've had several email exchanges both last year and this year, and nothing happened. So,
Yeah, we'll modernize and make them.
yeah, I appreciate that. That's the small piece there, the support piece. That's the last question or something. That's what are the people who
Yeah.
live in the community think?
Well, it's that,
or the representative?
I think that, to me, that really ties to the feasibility of the project in how much it is supported. So baseline level of support is just a project in our metro plan that has been discussed with local staff. Kind of next phase is is that project really represented in the municipality's master plan? Next, has it been kind of endorsed by the select board or city council? And then I consider the highest level of quote unquote support in this instance, if it's funded in a CIP, in the capital improvement program, where if there are actual dollars invested in the program, to me, for this purpose, that seems like the highest level of support because it's been discussed at the local level and public meetings, and the town or the city has deemed it reasonable and eligible to get funded and a high enough priority. So I think that's what support means in this context, where the sort of public process is the baseline. It's not just in a smoke-filled room been developed and put forward. And I think it is a small piece of the pie because it's a little bit more of a pass-fail isn't the right thing to word you use. But if there isn't support, the project shouldn't go forward, and there just isn't that,
That's the one question, and all it's worded in such a way that doesn't,
yeah.
Wait.
Yeah.
The other ones, there's more variation in the question.
Yeah.
I have one more question. I don't want to get ahead of you, but if I'm ahead of what you're going to say, just stop me.
We're all going to talk about it.
Memo here. First deadline for November.
Yes.
Can you talk about those three bullets? Particularly the third bullet, it says, one of the deadline items for November is final prioritized and fiscally constrained project list due NHDOT by March 31st, 2023. Can you talk about that fiscally constrained subject?
Yes. I'm happy to talk about that right now. Do you want me to talk about that before we vote on this?
Well, if we talk about it somewhere in the process, it's fine. It doesn't have to be right.
Okay, that's next up.
Fine.
And I've organized the bullets in a weird way. I see that. So, yeah, if folks are comfortable voting on this. Then.
Anybody, what is people's reaction to the pie chart? You good with it, or you have some comments?
I'm struggling how to say this, but the least important thing to this group, according to this, is the equity and environmental justice. And I'm regretting that I'm not somebody who's good computers and I can figure out how to build. I'm just wondering if we don't have the diversity in the room, does that mean that we're not understanding the need for that? And then are we not valuing something that might? I'm just uncomfortable with how small.
Everybody's the way.
So,
The smallest one of all of them.
So, yeah, so just to partially answer your question, hopefully, one of the challenges that people have had in this process in the past, it's come up pretty much every time I've been working here, every round, is that these criteria are not mutually exclusive. And so it's hard to, it's difficult to judge projects on them a little bit because it's not a zero-sum game on each project. So yeah, I don't know if I have a good answer for you,
I
really.
guess just bringing awareness that different voices have different values and our voices are really similar.
Yeah, and so there's equity for the individuals as well, but I think also there's the regional equity with where funding is allocated as well. What projects get funded to, so that's
No, I was just gonna say, if you all as a group want to play with the numbers, we can certainly pull up the spreadsheet, and play with the numbers.
possible there. And so just to kind of start answering your question, Dave, with the November 11th deadline, we then have between now and March 31st to review all the projects and kind of look at it, discuss concerns of safety, equity, and those sorts of things. So there's a lot more room for deliberation this time around, where there is unfortunately a cold hard calculation that has to be done at a certain point on the projects. But Jim's right, if we want to pull up and fiddle with the spreadsheet, talk about that. That is well within your option.
I appreciate the question. Really am. And when I did my scoring or evaluation on that, maybe comes from a lens of sort of deferred maintenance and infrastructure that needs to be addressed from a safety perspective or kind of state of the state and more. I actually, when I came to that criteria, I was struggling. How do I rate that in light of a bridge project or an intersection improvement project or pedestrian improvements? And so I scored it, probably lower because I thought things like safety, mobility, in the broadest context, scored high. And the environmental justice part, and I would submit, I think that's a fairly new criteria, right? Maybe the last 2 years, 3 years.
I think it showed up in the last round for the first time.
Okay, the first time. So I think we're learning a little bit about what that means and what does it mean in Strafford County? And what does it mean nationally in projects? And I think we're beginning to understand the impacts of projects that either impacted neighborhoods or did not impact neighborhoods. What does that mean economic development, quality of living, those things? So I was kind of looking at that broadly and then looking at kind of the more traditional, I would submit to you, with regard to hardscapes and the safety and
Yeah,
mobility.
it's safety. Safety. Where?
Yeah.
Looked at it from, when it comes to the natural hazards, a lot of bridges. And suddenly we're dealing with the issues of flooding and the hazard that creates in the network and mobility and all of that. So if we don't correct that, then we have real problems down the road. As we've heard in Farmington, just the two different agencies can't agree on your levy. That's a problem, but the issue is flooding. So suddenly I think we're kind of dealing with an issue that perhaps people on the seacoast, because of rise in sea level, have been dealing with for quite a while. But so that's why I put the natural hazards higher in my rating than some other things because of the number of bridges. And when it comes to equity, we're talking about projects that are being repaired that already exist, not the placement of a new project and where that might go and who that might affect. So for me, that put equity closer to the bottom, where I think that was on the bottom. my thought process, because we're dealing with existing situations that already, you know, have impacted one way or another in the past, but now we need to fix them or improve them for the safety reasons. And all of that. That's kind of my thought process. Can I ask a question? Just to, I don't know. The infrastructure that was passed in Washington, pushing lots of money out, but basically a 10-year period. Okay.
Five, yeah.
Oh, I thought it was 10, sorry.
The latest one is a 10-year plan.
Okay. Five. On this issue of the things that probably should have been fixed like last year or 5 years ago or whatever, we have a bunch of those. Is there a point in time where certain things that might involve new projects, contrasting existing problems with some new projects that might impact neighborhoods and things like that? How do those things measure up as being put into the 10-year plan being important relative to this infusion of money that's going to be coming in for 5 straight years?
In our 10-year plan process?
Well, this particular exercise, are there a lot of projects that are likely to go in that are brand new projects, or is most everything fixing an existing problem or existing shortfall or all of that? I'm trying to figure out whether, said bluntly, most of the equity thinking is going to be for stuff that's, you know, out into the future because it's new stuff. When does equity take on a bigger role? Might we think differently about it next year this time, or 2 years?
2 years.
2 years. Or is the timing and what the focus is and when the money is flowing in? Such a brief period of time, we're not going to actually have an overlap with the equity type of things that we're talking about, future projects in town, making sure they're done in the right part of town to help everybody out. Do you understand my question?
I think so. So
It was it's awkwardly worded, I apologize. So I'm trying to figure out the bucket of money we're talking about.
it's so with the money, we will have.
What if the money's there, but no equity project shows up?
Then I think the blunt answer is that there isn't a big brother looking over us, making sure that we're putting projects, funding projects in an equitable way so much. So it's up to this board to consider the suite of projects that are before us and take the time to review them and see where those potential equity issues are. So it can be anything. It can be giving a bit more priority to projects in communities or projects that are cited in an area where there are more people with lower income, or you name it, if it age, or more likelihood for people to be taking trips on foot, so like school kids. It can be making sure that the funding, we have an equal number of or as close to possible equal funding for rural communities and urbanized ones. The bipartisan infrastructure law, it's more of a commitment than a requirement. It's called Justice 40. They want to ensure that the administration wants to ensure that 40% of funds invested through that bill are in communities that are underrepresented, traditionally low-income communities of color, according to census data. So maybe for just to start answering your previous question, I'm going to be sending you all snapshots on each of the projects that will include things like infrastructure conditions. So that's another equity issue. If a smaller community has fewer funds to keep their bridges, in sparkly new condition, that's what I think is an equity issue. There will be demographic information through the snapshot. Yep. So Jen just go the one right here. I go back to the folders. So this is kind of what I have so far. So sort of in other business, we have signed a contract with VHB to conduct engineering analyses of all these projects as we're reviewing and scoring them, as you are. And I've sent these along to them to kind of give them an idea of what the projects are going to look like. We have 7 projects total. This is one in Durham, where they want the proposal is to convert this project, this intersection, to a roundabout. They're being proactive as they observe traffic volumes increase. So there's going to be crash information on here. There's sort of a duplicate map. We'll clean that up. But so I want to give you all as much information as possible so you can make judgment calls about things like equity and the impact of these projects. So yeah, this is just sort of, there's a little safety crash summary dashboard thing here on each of the projects within the project area. Larry.
Thank you. For our catchment area, using the mythical, progressive, perspective definitions of whatever 40% is there a color-coded map that defines those 40% areas of interest?
Yes. So on the data snapshot that's online, and I'll pick pages out to go along with all these materials for your quick reference. Jen's going to it now. You can identify areas where there are concentrations of minority populations, places with low income. We can even get an idea of where there are more people with lower access to a vehicle, those sorts of things.
And that is cross-linked to the projects
Where they are located. But some information doesn't show up in that data that is relevant to equity discussions. So in these cases, you're talking about a project that would be a brand new facility dedicated to non-motorized users, where they have school kids and other in-town residents going back and forth, where you don't see them today because there isn't a safe facility. So it's impossible to measure. So we can't go out there and give an idea of the traffic volume of people going back and forth because there isn't anything suitable or safe for them currently. So that's a good example of kind of the tricky nature of making these decisions, where this round I'm happy we get to give you guys a heck of a lot more time. Let me just go to page. So here's an example of what we have online for looking at race and ethnicity, where you see the concentrations of the non-white population. It's concentrated in urban communities, but you got a whole pocket up there in Farmington. So I'm talking at length. Is this at all helpful? I kind of planned to send out these snapshots after double checking with you again to first thing tomorrow on Monday morning or today, since they're kind of at a saturation point. So yeah,
Just an example that's out there would be the Exit 9 review. the purpose of exit 9 was to bring traffic into downtown Somersworth or along the Route 108 corridor. But since that's been out there floating in the air, look what we've done with Route 108. It's become a commercial corridor. Now we have on that, on the list, the complete streets for Route 108. And so that's going to improve things. Is exit 9 going to be needed? Well, Rochester's done a significant amount of development around there. So do we want to displace people? Probably not. And that's a real issue down the future. So in terms of equity, exit 9 may not be needed. It may just, I don't know how Mike feels about it, but it may, I don't know how our city manager and councilors feel about it, but it's really going to be needed. So,
This is a point of order. When you're saying 9, you really mean 10, right?
I mean, yeah, exit 10, I'm sorry. Thank you very much.
I think we all thought that.
Yeah, exit 10, I'm sorry.
And so, in that example, the equity, I don't even want to call it analysis, but the equity consideration is balancing the displacement of the people between 108 and this Spalding Turnpike with, does a new exit give more access to economic opportunities to the people who live closer to downtown Somersworth, where there's more likely people there that are working 2 or 3 jobs just to keep the light on, or can't afford higher quality housing out in that rural space between 108 and the Turnpike. So those are the types of things. That's our focus moving forward, is being able to provide, at the very least, provide data for you all to make determinations about that. Because back in the good old exit 10 days, this body, as well as the 3 cities, it came down to a yes or no vote on do we go forward with any of these proposals, and the vote was no from enough communities because of the environmental issues, which that's environmental justice. There is does the loss of wetlands or the increase in emissions or the increase in noise disproportionately affect people who don't have a voice in this process? And that's one of the EJ considerations. So I am looking forward to these conversations and the fact that we can have them with the projects, because last round, these types of conversations got crushed at the end and weren't really able to be considered at their full length before we had to make a decision. So, yes, yeah.
One, I think that quite a number of the people in the room did not participate last year in this process. And I'll tell you, this part that Colin's talking about right now is an incredible enhancement. It's fantastic that we will have that. My question is, this is the key level set here. When it comes to establishing these weights, but that's been done, but can be modified, the weights. My understanding was that was to be done without considering any specific projects at all.
Correct.
So, I want to make sure we're clear on that, because while it's difficult as human beings, when we're trying to establish the weights that are reflected in those results, whatever she put it back together, that's the challenge. To force yourself to try and develop many great things. And all of these subjects weren't great subjects. They wouldn't even be making this pie chart. Okay, they're all important. But there needs to be some, other than, everybody's saying, well, I'm just going to spread it evenly, like peanut butter across a piece of bread, and everybody's going to get, every subject's going to get the same. You end up with these things. As a result of doing our job and thinking about it this way without attaching it to, oh, I got this great project coming up I'd like my project to make it in, so the funding is on my project. No, we stay neutral on that. It does not mean when you get the list of the projects and you have the benefit of all of Colin's hard work and you see all this stuff, it screams out. This is an equity project. This is really about equity, or a lot of it's about equity. My understanding is that if that's the case, that's an example of where it's going to run up against that weighting that's been established in advance. Isn't that correct?
More or less. So this is just, this first phase here is just to get a list to DOT so that they can review. We don't have to cut any of the projects or decide which one's better than the other at this point. And then, so March 31st is when we have to do that. And the fiscal constraint thing is we are going to have a little over $5 million to fund the projects in that list. And it's not going to be able to fund all of them. So that's where the scoring process comes in. But we have between now and March 31st to really delve into the issues of equity and how much this project improves safety over the other relative to the safety need and that sort of thing.
Challenging. Because
So-
the amount of money, everybody got what they want. I forgot it was a big number there.
For what?
With all the projects involved. It's an enormous number.
I haven't added up, you mean the total cost of all the projects?
Yeah.
I haven't added that up because we haven't gotten the real engineers to look at it just yet. But Jen makes
We
a,
don't have a calculator that has enough pages on there.
Jen makes a good point with just a point of process. We will have the Survey Monkey tool for scoring, where in that tool, you all wouldn't be making a quantitative evaluation necessarily. You'd be looking at the data, like on the snapshot and so forth, but then saying, I think this project has, so if it's safety, I think this project has a really high need because of the number of type crashes. And looking at the scope, I think it's going to have a huge impact because it focuses on pedestrians in an area where the risk is high or demonstrated there have been a lot of crashes with pedestrians. So that's the kind of score you're going to assign that project. On the back end, the numbers in SurveyMonkey will pump out and export with Excel. So all to say, if you all want to take another crack at the weights, we can do that, and you can also score the project at the same time and maintain that kind of quantitative objectivity. Does that all make sense? So if you all want to take a look at another, if we can go over right now and add Trent's weights and make sure I got Dave's and add Mark's as well. If you all want to do that.
Couple of things. So equity, I think we mentioned it. So a lot of the projects in 10-year plan are basically maintain the current infrastructure. Maintain the infrastructure is really based on condition. Based on that condition, where it's basically roads and conditions. So, but it's also built in is the 10-year plan, the funding that comes to us. It's kind of equity. We have different pots of money, so that we get a big chunk of federal money. There's both different buckets. And some of those buckets are based on population based. So we have buckets of money to spend on areas under 5,000, population between 5,000, 50,000, 200,000, and over 200,000. So there's some equity built in that money we can't spend. So some of the main comparison will need to go 5,000, 5,000, 50,000. So there'll be work done in these areas because of the population. So there is some better public health that out of the TA Education Alternative Program. Again, that is funded down to different population bases, and should like industrial get spread out among. So there is some that already built into it anyway. It's new projects, really just really the decision on that. One big project. I think. But the big project we have is. Most of the money is. All data driven decisions.
So if we're already really heavy towards safety and state repair, are we stopping ourselves from thinking about having such a small, I guess, in our meeting going forward, it's already so clear that we're focused on, you know, if safety and maintenance, state repair, that's like a start. Yeah, do we have to continue to make that, you know, 27% or whatever, you know, such a huge percentage. If this is a new way of thinking, I'm just concerned about this. That piece of mind. So I hear you. It's easy to stay in the same tracks, do the same thing, and then maybe have it a little off track or whatever. I think what's hard to do is to really look at the and say, okay, so, you know, I don't know how to, maybe this is something that as we grow with the group and as we we'll start to see.
We understand exactly what you're saying. We do. I think we do. This is a struggle. This is a very good conversation we're having. It's a very important conversation. I get to figure out the exit, but as the chair, I'm just going to be a little blunt. Okay, that's sort of my way. I'm going to ask a question. If everybody, is it only our particular motions or the others that are contributing to this decision? Who did the survey go out to? Was it just this group?
Checking policy.
Tracking policy. How many people are in tracking policy? 100% of all the people fill this out. How many people would have to do it?
I get the number, but it's, yeah.
50. And roughly speaking, there's a few that are missing because I remember doing it. I tortured you for half an hour on the phone. So, and we have probably a third, a quarter of people. Or what?
Yeah, probably about a quarter.
Okay.
Like that.
So here's my point. We don't have a hard deadline to get you on this chart, these percentages. I will speak for myself. It took me a few minutes to even figure out where to find the definitions of what each of these buckets meant. And I was trying to think, did I miss this memo or something? And like a lot of things, after I dug around for a while and I found it, I thought, oh, it's on this snappy chart, you know, and it's actually laid out. But then that's where the kind of the overlap came in, where there isn't these sharply defined buckets. You know, there's some that's in buckets that are in multiple buckets. I think it's challenging to do this survey, and I would encourage anybody that struggles, much as I struggle with it, either give Colin a call and make sure you've got that key couple of pieces of paper, you know, the chart with the explanation of what all these definitions are. You can read them, and then take a crack at it. Maybe it's like anything else, you know, people are going to do it or not do it, or they find busy lives or forgot or whatever. But there's a relatively small number of people that have contributed to this. And I think we find out when we start talking about it, which is incredibly important. We're all impacted by listening to each other talk about it and how we characterize things and what do these things really mean? What is the actual impact? And how do these percentages of weight tie in with the money we're talking about? What is the intention of the money we're talking about receiving? What is it trying to accomplish? The criteria for use of the money is X. The weighting is kind of out of whack. Is that reconciled at some point? You know, there's a lot in this, and it's almost like you don't even realize, but you don't realize. So I like this process. I like that it's stretched out over a longer period of time. Believe me, for the people that weren't involved in this before, believe me, this is much improved. And the stuff that Colin's putting together, so you can actually read about these projects and think about it, it's fantastic. But if there's anybody that wants to take a crack at it after they've now listened to some of this discussion, it's worthwhile. They get a chance because when they tried to with their computer, I've got an Apple computer too. I feel like I love my Apple computer, but there's days when I just want to throw it out and figure out what these are the most popular computers in the world. What the hell's going on here? You know, why am I struggling so much? It happens to me on a daily basis. Anyway, I've gone way out of line here, but the point is if you want to wait till give people who haven't done it yet to contribute it, make sure that we've got all the people that put their data in it and reflect it. I think we should at least do that before we vote on anything or do anything that resembles voting on it. That's all.
So is the suggestion that Colin sends that out again and gives folks another couple of weeks to revisit the polling? Is that what I'm hearing?
As long as we're not obligated to act today, I think that'd be smart.
Yeah. I mean, given maybe the technology issue and that, the smaller number of respondents. I mean, I think also, just FYI, I think on the exit 10, at least in the Somersworth side, there's still support for that, for the project as defined with regard to evaluating the alternatives and so forth. And I would submit that the equity issue and perhaps even the environmental justice will surface again in that. And I would say with all of our projects, I think that was kind of weaved into maybe your remarks, David, or even Collins, that yes, it's a small percentage, but when we go through the grocery list, we're going to weave that in, and it will be a discussion similar like we're having right now regarding the justice aspect and the fairness and the equity of the project, including I think I could probably even say in a maintenance area as well. How come, Durham's getting a project and Somersworth isn't, or so it takes it to another level, I suppose, too. Right? So in as much as there's criteria, there's percentages, I still think this body will have a chance to weave all those factors in and come to consensus on our number 1 through 10 and projects are. So I mean, I'm certainly supportive of maybe kicking it out again, and maybe with the agreement that we come back in September with a endorsement. And people participated great. If they didn't, then just move on.
And I think and I don't know if this was happened, but you know what documents I'm talking about, those pages of documents that are nicely laid out on. If you send this out again, will you include that with the survey? Those two.
Thanks.
I think it's cool.
Okay, I have to go back to my email, but I included
Well, I found that, but I found it in a different spot.
Idea.
Yeah.
Just in case it doesn't, because again, it could be Apple computer. I'm amazed at the stuff that I can't retrieve, so.
Sorry.
Thank you. Question, what is the maximum universe that this survey was at?
About 50 people, both this committee and the technical advisory committee.
And if you look around this room, what are our demographics? What little of my hair you can see is gray. I think of myself as watching a pink with a little suntan. I'm still binary. I'm the last wasp with a sense of humor. That is our universe.
Yeah.
That's not reflected. And which point was being made. We are still auto-centered. 25 years ago, the joke was Rochester had 5 exits on the Spalding Turnpike, all 6 of them useless. Milton has 2 exits in Spalding, which have effectively destroyed the town. A exit 10 would or would not bring people in or make it easier for them to get the hell out or shut down in Portsmouth. Portsmouth was more inclusive and representational when it was a pretty backwater of ethnic enclaves. And what did Portsmouth in is something we can't control, which is independent financial investment. And that brings back to my question for where the areas of interest, definition of our what the projects would be. What did Tunnel Dock improve or destroy? I'm sorry. But
Your mask is mushing your voice.
Right.
I wear a mask and I can't hear as well.
Let me pump the voice up. Useless historical mildly humorous question. Did Tunnel Dock destroy or improve Portsmouth? And when it became Strawberry? And that question was being asked. I'm sorry, I cannot read the blank side of the name. Adjourn. Thank you, Adjourn.
So just for the significance of this process, the waiting aspect, and the value that discussion brings to everybody, I do think it's worthwhile to give one more shot at it. That's the whole number of people that contribute to it. It's fine, but I think we learn a lot from these conversations. At least feel good about. If we learned something from last year, is we'd like to get to the end of this process and feel good about the process. We don't have to love the outcomes at all, but we don't want to have pretty much everybody walking out and saying, "Wow, that was interesting." Yeah, this is much improved. So.
So, to help everyone out, I know there are different, everybody has a different way that they would, that they work and operate, and different comfort levels. So, I've passed around to everyone a blank version of the score sheet in paper. You are more than welcome to use that and send us your handwritten piece of paper, and we can then later plug in your numbers and make the magic work behind the scenes. If you want to stay and do it here today and leave it with us, that is fantastic and probably very easy to do. What we'll do is we'll also just do a follow-up since we're opening it back up. Maybe send a follow-up email out to TAC members. Anyone from TAC that did not have an opportunity or missed the opportunity and would like to do so, but they have a second chance to send theirs in as well. I've also printed out for everyone what the definitions are of these scoring criteria. Just as a heads up, they are not presented in the same order as they are on your list, but they are all still there. So that's been sent to the printer. It is coming. It'll be ready. It takes a minute. So I'll make sure I bring those back into you before you head out. Keep this 12-pager. Because you will use that as a reference for doing the scoring as well. However, I will say that, learning from the Excel process and moving the project scoring to SurveyMonkey, this information is also being built into the SurveyMonkey questions. So you'll have a little bit of a preface information, trying to really streamline that to make it a little bit easier, more user-friendly, and more compatible across everybody's systems. So nonetheless, keep this resource guide. It is used through the whole scoring process. Just as a like step by step. So each table that you see, you have 10 points that you can give out. And so you can allocate your 10 points any way you see fit across the table. So you can, how many different things do we have here? 7, you could give 3 of them 2 and all the rest 1, or I don't know if I just did my math right. For each of these are the sub criteria. So go ahead, you have 10 points, you can go 5 and 5, you can go 1 and 9, however you want, but each table should add up to 10. As long as you make sure each table adds up to 10, it will all work and we can plug it right into our system that we have set up to aggregate and average out all of the scores. So there you go. That's it in a nutshell. And we definitely want to make sure that our weights are representative of everyone's work. So.
I'm not trying to work technology, but is this forms, are they going to go out to the other 40 people that aren't here?
We could do another send out, yeah.
I'm not trying to say don't use that, because once we talked, I think we understood it. I actually liked it, but it was no.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So I'll send that out. Just for the last bit of discussion here related to the tenure plan, just to make sure that everyone understands the process here. Sure.
Yeah, I haven't been doing anything about sharing the screen here today.
So as it said in the memo, November 11th is our main deadline to get this to DOT. So we have September and October meetings to discuss any further. I realize now that the bullets are confusing because it just makes it look weird on the memo. But DOT is going to be reviewing those projects internally at the same time that our consultant VHB is going to be doing their review to get us kind of real world cost estimates and assessments of the scopes. We're going to meet with DOT to get their feedback in the January-February timeframe. And we have the entire time to review the projects. As I said, I'll be sending out little project snapshots and as much information as is humanly possible and reasonable for you all to look at those projects in detail and make judgment calls about what impact they'll have and what their need is. All of this has to wrap up with a final decision by March 31st, 2023. So as I said, we're anticipating having a little bit over $5 million to fund these projects. It will not fund all 7, I guarantee that. And so there will be this quantitative process with the scores of the weights, but there will also be plenty of time for qualitative discussion about the projects so that we'll have plenty of time to score those and we have time to discuss. But we will need a smaller list of projects that fits within that slightly over $5 million budget by March 31st. That will go into the 10-year plan. All of these projects will go into the Metro plan, regardless of what happens with this process. And there are plenty of other funding opportunities coming up, like transportation alternatives that Glenn mentioned, and a number of other things.
This last meeting, we were talking, we came up with a project, I can't remember quite whether it was in someone's looking at, but you had a cost, what the cost is going with it. So we've got $5 million here. Is that one project? Is that two?
It depends on what
Is that one project,
project.
two projects? I mean, that's the other thing that we gotta think about here. Is that the cost, when that engineering comes back and says, that cost for that project that you thought was $1 billion is now 2.1, that's gonna be a constraint even more than that. So I mean, this is gonna be, it's gonna be very, very difficult. Because it could be one project. Not,
Yeah,
but but it's not gonna be a whole bunch.
it's not gonna be all of them. I don't think, well, I'm not even gonna make any judgment calls because the engineers know more than I, and I know the bipartisan infrastructure law, resulted in a 20% increase in funding overall, but the cost of constructing projects is about 25% of what it was when that thing passed. So dollars are going, more dollars are not going as far as we had hoped. So that is part of the reality, and I'll have those facts and figures for you soon.
Thank you.
But that's going to be the hard call. Any questions on the process? Anything else? I appreciate this level of detail and rigor. So I'm just glad, again, we have more time. My thanks to DOT. I know I share the same thanks with all the other RPCs that we started this process almost literally to the day that the 10-year plan was signed, and got this going. And I've been generating these projects with communities, but now we have lots more time to deliver. Because it is a big decision and a lot of factors that go into it. So.
Just one quick question. Is the 10-year plan available online?
It is. It's been signed, sealed, and delivered. It's on the DOT website. And I'll include a link in my email to that as well.
Okay, thank you.
It's really fast to find. You just Google NHDOT TYP,
There you go.
and it is the first thing that pops up.
Top of the page there.
And yeah, most version is always right at the top. So it's right nice. Easy to track down.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we're on to 4B.
Commissioner stuff.
Yeah. we have to move ourselves along a little bit.
Yeah.
Fine. We can-
There are a few things I would like to mention.
Go ahead.
So rather than put all of these things under staff communications, I lump them in under commissioner engagement and talking about us all working collaboratively and working as conduits, working as conduits between us, the planning commission, and your municipalities. And there are quite a few different things going on right now that are very important to maintain that line of communication in regard to. So rather than have a bigger conversation about how we can do better on commissioner engagement, we'll save that for another meeting. I would just like to say the last hour though was a really great example of commissioner engagement. So we are already practicing it to a certain extent. There's always room for improvement. So a handful of things that are ongoing and upcoming. We just had on Tuesday some workshops for our regional housing needs assessment that we had invited your municipal staff to attend. Those and Mark and a couple others were able to attend as commissioners. We didn't make a big focus on dragging you out for those because at our September commission meeting, we are going to essentially recreate that workshop and do that here with you all as commissioners. So be thinking about what your housing needs are in your community and come prepared to talk about what you or your community needs and how we can accomplish it and what role SRPC should play in helping to meet our region's housing needs. So that's, stay tuned for and that will be the quarterly commission meeting, not our Friday morning policy meeting. So that will be here Thursday afternoon, September 22nd. We always say that the meeting starts at 3:45. That's to give you a little bit of time to have some networking with your peers and your neighbors. But yes, 3:45 here, September 22nd will be the commission meeting. The Friday before that will be the September policy meeting now. So it'll be a busy month. We'll see a lot of each other. So that's that piece. We also have the last week in September date still to be determined, but next week we will be sending out invites. So we'll be determining that date ASAP. We're going to be doing another housing needs assessment workshop. This is focused on various stakeholders. So the developers, real estate professionals, social service providers, other folks that are engaged in the housing conversation. And so that will be the last week of September, and invites will be going out next week. If you have folks in your community that you think fit that label as stakeholder, please send those names or contact info over to Shayna. She's the one who's going to be compiling all of that and sending it out. So we would love to have representation from across the region. This is a really good opportunity to do a better job of representation around the table. So think about whose voices are not already heard here, whose voices are not represented necessarily by your municipal staff. So that's who we want to get to the table for that stakeholder conversation. Related, there are several other things that are ongoing that are really important for us to keep track of and kind of keep the pieces together. So right now, just last week, the $5 million in planning and zoning Invest New Hampshire housing grants opened up. So that is, I kid you not, $5 million in grant funding for your municipalities that are available out there right now. There are two different programs that we're trying to keep an eye on and help communities with. The first is that New Hampshire Housing will be making 6 awards to hire what is called a housing navigator. A housing navigator is a staff person that will work on helping developers understand your regulatory framework and how to apply, helping to work on planning for housing in your community, helping to work on regulatory amendments that will help promote housing in your community. I say they're only going to be making 6 awards, so that's 6 people that can be hired to do this across the state. They are allowing communities to go in together, but they are set a cap at 4 communities that can go in together and share a housing coordinator. We have heard from a few communities that they are interested, but that they wouldn't necessarily be able to keep a staff person busy full time. So are potentially looking to share. So Lee is one of the communities that we have heard from that might want to share a person. Barrington is another. New Durham is another that we have heard from. So that's one thing to connect with your communities. Natalie in our office has been the point person. She has sent out just a short survey to your municipal staff to try and gauge interest level. So that would be another piece to just connect with your staff to see where they're at and if they have responded and what they're interested in. When it comes to the housing opportunity grants, those are the grants, those are the big ones that you want to keep an eye on as well. These will actually be not very competitive. So if you can put together a proposal that passes the straight face test, you will likely be funded. They have 3 different types of grants. There are assessment grants where that might be doing some planning, like updating the housing chapter of your master plan, doing a specific study for a neighborhood or an area that you might be focused on. There are audit grants. The audit grants, you can hire someone to go through your regulations and identify things that might be impediments to housing growth. The final grant opportunity is regulatory change. The regulatory change grants, there is the cap or the max grant is $100,000. That's a big chunk of money to do some regulation updates. And as long as it's tied to housing, it will be funded. Some really good opportunities there. On the housing, so kind of take these two grant opportunities navigators. If your community is interested in going in Dutch, I guess, on this, then we as our regional planning commission can act as that aggregator and apply on your behalf as that group entity. The housing opportunity grants, you, the municipality, apply for those grants. We can help you with putting together that application. This is where we do the shameless plug for SRPC. All the regional planning commissions are pre-approved vendors for serving as the consultants under that program. So this is where we do our pitch, like you want to hire us to do your municipal work. And if you so choose, we can do a lot of the grant writing for you. We might go with a private consultant. Well, then I don't know how much we can do the grant writing for you. No, we can, to be determined, depends on demand. So those are out there tied to our housing needs assessment work. So a lot going on in that universe. The third piece in that universe that we have coming up, I mentioned to our executive committee this morning, we are getting ready to get in all our documents for an earmark request. Senator Shaheen had put in an earmark on behalf of the 9 regional planning commissions. We at SRPC are the prime recipient of that and have taken the administrative role. It is just shy of $1 million that is split between the 9 of us, and it will be to update our regional plans and work on an implementation piece from our housing needs assessment. So we are working on that. So that's an opportunity that's going to be coming up that just to put on your radar because it's going to be fun things to do at the Regional Planning Commission. So those are kind of some of those big networking things that we have coming up that you want to have on your radar and chat with folks in your town hall about. We have,
Yeah.
yes.
So I'm clear, because if I had to repeat everything you just said, I couldn't do it. If I understand you, all 18 communities are getting communications from SRPC.
Yes.
So we should be able to speak with somebody in our community.
Yes.
And they'll know what we're talking about. They'll
I
know
hope
that
so.
we're aware of it. So we don't, I'm not taking any notes at the moment. I'm just listening.
Yes.
But that's okay, because I don't need to alert it then.
No.
Fine. I'm just making sure I'm clear on that.
And Colin sent out a really wonderful memo, like a meeting recap
I love
memo.
that.
So I will make sure to send you put some links in that for you.
Great.
Especially on the Invest New Hampshire grant opportunities.
When Natalie sent that out to the point persons in each of the communities,
Yes.
that's the planning directors,
It's
town managers.
Typically planning directors. Yep, and we've specifically chatted with Michelle.
Okay. Good.
Yep.
That's on the Invest New Hampshire.
Correct.
Is that 5 million statewide?
5 million statewide. In fact,
Competitive to a degree.
yeah, New Hampshire Housing did a webinar on Tuesday that was conveniently timed at noon. And we had a workshop from 9 to 11 and then another from 1 to 3. So we actually did a live screening here. So Michelle and Robin from Somersworth, they were here. They brought their lunch and joined me for lunch, and we watched the webinar together and then jumped right into the workshop at 1. So, yes. Donna was also here for that and came for the live screening, and yeah, so we had a little fun webinar watch party together here. Planners, getting our planner nerd on together, it was great. So there's that. That's the connection between you going back to your municipality connections, kind of the coming back this way connections, We have a couple different things where we need some volunteers. So we typically have a regional impact committee. We have not had a lot on the universe of regional developments of regional impact come in the last few years because, well, there just hasn't been that much of really big size in the last few years. We've now had 3 in the last 2 months. Third one just came in yesterday. And we have several vacancies on our regional impact committee. So wanted to put that out. The regional impact committee only meets when we have a development of regional impact that is sent to us by one of your towns. What is a development of regional impact? It's a development that's big enough or of a nature that it might have an impact on a neighboring community. So it gets sent to the neighboring community, it gets sent to us. We get to review and comment on it just like we were in a butter. The regional impact committee does not vote to approve or deny permits. They just get together to review what those impacts might be and what some of those considerations might be and help put together a memo and send it to the community that has declared the development of regional impact. But they do get together and convene to do that review. And we do make it a public meeting, and so folks do come and share their thoughts and tell us what we need to know. Grant time. So we do have several openings on that. Also, our chair, Wesley Merritt from Durham, has just let us know that he is moving, and he will be moving outside of the region. And so he will be stepping down as obviously as a commissioner and as a result as chair of that committee. So we need members and we need a chair. So I wanted to just put that out there today to see if there are people that are interested. We will put this on the agenda for the September commission meeting to hopefully make those appointments at that time. Similarly, the New Hampshire Association of Regional Planning Commissions, we have a vacant seat on that as well. Don Hammond, who is also on our executive committee from Rochester. Don serves as a representative to the New Hampshire Association of Regional Planning Commissions. He's actually now our treasurer. And Megan is the staff administrator of that group. So we have a vacancy to sit there. And we're kind of going through a process where we're redefining what the role is for the Association of Regional Planning Commissions. So it's an opportunity to kind of speak up and be heard. And this is a venue where it's all 9 regional planning commissions that get together. It is from each region, it is 2 commissioners and the executive director that are the representatives to the association. And it's that opportunity to think about the role of regional planning commissions in the state and what we can do and what we can bring back to our own regions as well. So that's another one where we're looking for someone who might be interested. And again, we'll be sending out an official plea and it will be on the September agenda. Hopefully. And if you haven't already, please fill out your skills matrix that Megan sent you. It is in SurveyMonkey. It is much friendlier. We're learning.
I saw it last night.
All right.
Anybody have anything they want to share from the meetings? Peter.
Noticed that on Monday, the Public Utilities Commission approved the docket for Eversource's $2 million plus proposal for electric vehicle charging. I don't know if Tim White's still hanging in there with us, but it might be good to get an update on where the electrical vehicle charging and the VW settlement funds project sits. 5 years into the allocation of those funds, we haven't built a single charging station yet. But this is a significant, hopefully a significant step forward. So maybe Tim can comment on that.
I'm still here, Mr. Chairman. Yep. Where the DC fast charging RFP stands right now is that We've selected locations. Unfortunately, I can't provide any details on them, but we're negotiating the contracts with the selected grantees. At the present time, we're looking to get that wrapped up as quick as we can. We hope to have those contracts go to Governor Council, I want to say fairly soon. I'm hoping certainly over the next couple of months, we would have those contracts going to Governor and Council so that we can get those locations under contract with the sub-grantees. That's probably the best information that I can provide to you right now on the timetable for that. But needless to say, everybody's looking to see some progress on this process, and we're trying to get it done as soon as we can.
Tim, how many stations are we talking?
Unfortunately, I can't provide any details on that kind of information right now. It is, I think, probably going to be, I mean, in terms of a specific number, I wouldn't want to provide that, but it's probably going to be in the neighborhood of 10 stations at least.
Yeah, I'd still like to see a little more, I'm always just sort of concerned that from a regional planning perspective, we don't seem to spend much time on the energy front. And, electric vehicle charging is gaining a lot of attention and some importance. Ties in with the whole transportation planning component. So, I think this should be high on every community's radar screen. I think we should be doing, more planning around that. We've had millions of dollars sitting in. Actually, Tim, a big question. What happens with the millions of dollars that have been sitting there? Are we getting interest on that? I mean, $30 million allocated 6 years ago has to be adding up. Someone must be making money on that.
The total allocation for the state minus what has already been expended actually gets invested by the VW trustee in very safe types of investments. So we're actually accruing interest on the remaining balance that is being held by the trustee right now. In addition to that, there are also service fees that are charged by the trustee to be able to accomplish that. So, short answer to the question is we get interest minus the maintenance fees that are charged by the trustee on that balance.
This would be interesting numbers to see.
We do get monthly statements from the trustee. Now, the extent to which I'm able to release that information, I would probably have to check with my supervisors to find out the extent to which that information is available.
And just as a follow-up, it didn't really fit with today's agenda and what we had to get done, but Mark across the hall has been doing analysis of the potential EV charging sites that municipalities proposed and getting us set up for that. So that is coming up. So there are a number of sites that will most likely be a local decision in the end. But if we have a regional set of projects ready to go, funding is out there. So that's something to talk about in the future on the energy side.
Okay, terrific. Yep.
Larry?
Thank you. Larry Brown, Milton. There is some information that is not available to a person because it's not on their computer or whatever. But my unfortunate takeaway from lack of knowledge is that we're talking about a public investment, a dollar amount that can be configured of the original 30 million that is invested through a state 91A process that has fiduciary costs and a rate of return. And you can't provide that?
Well, I can check with my supervisors to find out the extent to which we can release information on the funds which are being held by the trustee. I mean, it has to be done according to the stipulations of our agreement with the with Wilmington Trust, who's in charge of keeping that money for us.
Are you saying you have the authority to step beyond the requirements of 91A in an off-side investment?
Well, no. What I'm saying is I'm obligated to abide by the agreements of our contract with Wilmington Trust. I mean, we understand that this information is of interest to the public, and I will be able to check with my supervisors on the extent to which, according to the agreement that we have with Wilmington Trust, on the extent to which I can release information related to that balance of the state's funds for the Volkswagen settlement.
Thank you.
So, Colin, you just mentioned about the EV station. That's the Volkswagen Plus. That's just the infrastructure.
That's primarily infrastructure bill funding and beyond that, just the anticipation that the EV market is growing exponentially, and being prepared for the best place to put chargers, regardless of the funding sources. But there is money out there, and we want to help communities invest in those sorts of things that want to do it. It's agnostic of the funding sources.
Just a little bit on a similar but different subject. Locally, at the planning board meeting the other night, we had a conceptual presentation for housing development in downtown Somersworth. Not a full application, just a conceptual design and conversation, which is much less formal in our planning board meetings. And the developer presents their case, we give them our opinions and that kind of thing. There's no formal vote on anything at all, they just take notes. But I noticed there were ample handicap parking, but no EV parking noted. So I made that suggestion. The developer went, "Oh yeah, of course, gee, we didn't even think about that." So, you know, at that level, when you see something that isn't there and it's a developer, make that suggestion. And we're not fully enveloped in this process where there are like handicap parking, so many spots per parking spaces, but that's not there yet, at least in our regulations for EVs. So we got to develop that. So it's just kind of interesting that it happened the other night.
Yeah. Just to kind of put a plug out there again, commissioner engagement, taking things back to your communities. A year or two ago, Colin and Kyle worked with Dover to draft some provisions that are in their development regulations to require EV charging as part of their parking standards. So that's something that we were able to provide to Dover free of charge under our transportation programs as a technical assistance thing. So it's something, because you pay dues, we have technical assistance dollars that we can leverage. So did all of that work on drafting the amendments to the regulations for the city free of charge. So, yeah. So it's something that we can do. You can take that back to your community. We're happy to assist with that.
Or just build on that. I think it's an excellent point Mark brings up. It's similar, it's a tiny item, but in our planning process, Mark will know this, we require developers to put in bike racks. So it's just a staple. It's like, there you go. So I think moving in that direction is. Real quickly, just an update on bids recently that we took, both on the CMAC and the TAP grant in Somersworth. So at least on the TAP grant, I think I reported last time, we got one bid from a vendor, from a contractor, a very experienced contractor, but we had in our budget about $770,000 for a sidewalk project. One bid came in at $1.1 million. So that's about 34% higher than budget or the engineer's estimate. But we're currently working with the state on approving that or not. We hope it will be approved, considering that it's just a single bid. Typically, that's not always received well, but in this economy, and I think in this dynamic, you get one bid, we kind of do it. And so I think the state, and through Tom Jameson and his team and Bill Watson, they're looking at it closely, CRWB as well, to validate whether or not it can be approved, and then can we approve the increased funds. So from a regional perspective, just we'll stay close on that with you. There'll be an increase in cost for the city of Somersworth, also for the corresponding local share. But we're very supportive and interested. I can't speak for our city council, but I think that it would be well received if we hear back. Secondly, on a more favorable note on a bid, although we got one bid for our CMAC project, this is our traffic signal and corridor improvement on High Street that we've been engaged with for probably about 5 years, I think, 4 years. Finally got a bid, finally got two bids, or to a bidding stage. We received one bid also, but in this case, that particular proposal was slightly under the engineer's estimate. So it's sort of odd out there. And that project mostly has electronics and signal equipment and lights and things like that. What's that?
It's interesting.
Yeah, it is
Where's
interesting.
actually electronics that are the under?
Yeah, cabinets and
Maybe that's a good
electronics. There's some software, there's some cameras for synchronization or for timing. And there is some curb work to accommodate ADA accessibilities. But yeah, we were surprised by that. We did get a very qualified bidder who was very experienced, and he actually works for us on maintenance projects and recently installed the upgrades and build. So it's just all over the page, I think, with regard to what's going on in different segments. We recommend approval for that particular contract to the state as well.
I just wanted to, it was a very quick headline. I only got a few sentences into it, but it had to do with post-bus. And it was a very significant favorable development there. I was thinking it might, Mike Williams, he's typically here, but maybe at the next meeting or something, you could kind of give us an update on that, because that looked to be a very,
I can give the development, the snapshot version. Michael is probably, he may even be driving the bus now, because they still are having quite a driver shortage, and you may have seen headlines of them having to reduce or cut routes because of that driver shortage. It's just people with a commercial driver's license and a passenger endorsement are few and far between, and that's a nationwide thing. But on the good news side, Coast has been working on fully replacing their facility down in Dover with it would be administrative maintenance and operations with a bus shelter and all this stuff. Solar panels, cleaning new facility. They have gotten a string of really good grants from federal and state sources. then I think Brad said they just passed the 80% of what they would need for that, I believe, for construction. So they've been, it's almost fully designed at this point. So they've been making a lot of progress on that. So brand new facility, hopefully coming soon. Waiting on some federal earmarks through that are being not negotiated, but facilitated through the congressional delegations offices, and they just need some drivers. So the only one with a CDL, they're hobbled by the fact that they can't do the CDL certification in house. It's all a state process. So they can't just have people show up and say, hey, I want to be a bus driver, but I don't have a license. Can you help me with that? And they say, well, you got to go to the state first, and then it's a whole rigmarole. So, yeah, good news for Coast. It's big money. This one was 7 point something million. So if anyone wants to hang out after and want to talk through criteria and stuff, what the handwritten sheet or do it on the Excel with me, I'm open to that.
Everybody set online there? Okay. To adjourn this meeting? Everyone wants to
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Sorry. One quick thing, if you don't mind. Ricky Distiller from DES just wanted to remind everyone we have the Clean Diesel Grant Program. It is available right now. It's closing on September 9th. If you have projects in mind that would reduce diesel emissions, and that includes things like replacing an older plow truck with a newer plow truck, if that's something you have, please don't hesitate to find us online, des.gov. We'll have everything you need. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you all. Good weekend.